Hi, Mike Steinell here. First, a big thank you for listening to Murder at Birdland. Hope you're enjoying it. And a quick word about Episode 3. Episode 3 contains Chapter 5, The Elm Street Experiment, as well as a bonus preview of our next single release, The Experiment. The Experiment is one of the movements in the Murder at Birdland suite and was recorded at Crystal Clear Sound last year. It features Rosanna Eckert on vocals, Chris McGuire on tenor saxophone, Pat Coyle on piano, Chris Clark on bass, Steve Barnes on drums, and Gary Eckert on percussion.
Oh yeah, yours truly, Mike Steinell on trumpet.
Hope you like it. And now to the podcast.
Rosewood Audio presents Murder at Birdland, an audio novel narrated by its author, Mike Steinell. Murder at Birdland is a work of fiction loosely inspired by the lives and experiences of jazz musicians in the late 1940s who performed in and around 52nd Street in New York City. All names, places, and incidents depicted in this novel are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events is purely coincidental. And now, Episode 3 of Murder at Birdland.
Chapter 5, The Elm Street Experiment. The sky in the east had turned pink and was casting a gentle glow on the wall of the guest room on Elm Street. For Martin, sleep had come hard, but somewhere around 3 or 4 in the morning he had drifted off. Now, still in a half-sleep, he stared at the ceiling, trying to recall the pieces of a dream that had plagued him every night for a week. He asked in a whisper, "Purple shoes? Clouds? What's that? What's that about?" He stretched his arms, swung his feet to the floor, and rubbed his eyes. There were sounds from the kitchen. Sylvia was cooking. After breakfast, Martin's mother announced that she had appointments at the bank. It was decided that Martin would drive her there and drop her off. "I'll call when I'm finished, and you can pick me up, okay?" Morgan National Bank sat at the north corner of 3rd and Main. As they rode down the street, Martin glanced to his right at an empty building halfway down the block. The building that had once been Varenhorst Photography. A familiar, unsettling feeling returned. When Martin was 9 months old, the parents decided it was time for a family portrait and scheduled a session at the Varenhorst studio. Robert donned his best suit, Sylvia had her hair done, and Martin was tucked into a cute outfit. He cooed and babbled during the short ride downtown, but as they neared the studio, something changed. In the front windows, Varenhorst proudly displayed large examples of his best work, some nearly 3 feet tall. Even before the car stopped, Martin began to cry. He shrieked as they passed the windows and entered the studio, but his parents, determined to document their young family, pressed on. Varenhorst, a jolly man with white hair and a mustache to match, was confident he could calm the infant. He tried valiantly, but Martin only cried louder. 5 photos were taken. Each time the flash went off, Martin cried more intensely. He squirmed and shrieked, and eventually began turning blue from distress. At that point, Sylvia announced firmly, "That's all. That's it. I'm taking him outside." She left the studio and walked down the sidewalk, gently rocking her baby in her arms. With each step away from the studio, his sobs grew softer. Robert stayed behind to pay Varenhorst, who apologized and tried to refuse the check, but Robert insisted. Once outside, he was surprised to see Sylvia and Martin not in the car, but down the street, nearly a block away. The next day, every photo in their house on Elm Street was moved to Robert's study. At the bank, Martin helped Sylvia out of the car and watched her enter. Once she was inside, he walked toward the storefront that had once displayed Varenhorst's large prints. As he approached, a low buzzing began, faint at first, then stronger. He paused and thought of what his patient Thomas Gaylord had said in their last session. Then everything that happened before happened again. He looked at the clock in front of the bank. 9:20, he whispered. I'll have to work quickly. Back at the house, he sat on the sofa and opened the brown box with the checkered top. Taking great care to only touch the photos by their edges, he laid them on the coffee table. They were warm to the touch and gave off a faint buzzing. He leaned back, thinking again of Thomas Gaylord. Led by some intuitive impulse, he stood up and went to the door of Robert's study. He pushed it open and walked slowly to the desk. There were photos on the desktop, and Martin felt their heat. Leaning back, he opened the drawers one by one, searching for what he thought might be there. Robert's Polaroid camera. It was called the Big Swinger. Robert, always eager to enjoy the latest trend, had bought the Big Swinger for himself for Christmas in 1964. Martin found the camera on the bottom left drawer and studied it before touching it. He moved his hand toward it and felt no heat. He turned it over in his hands, trying to remember exactly how it worked. He had seen Robert use it many times, but usually from a distance. On the side, he found the small tab used to extract the print. Could it still have film in it? He wondered. From the 70s? Could it still work? By the time he reached the living room, he had worked out the plan. Standing before the sofa, he put the camera to his face and looked through the viewfinder at the clock on the mantel. Wait, he thought. The room's too dark. Need more light. He switched on every light in the room, then went to the front windows that faced the street. He pulled the blinds wide open. Sunlight poured in. Returning to his spot before the sofa, he aimed the camera at the clock, which now read 10:10. He pushed the red button that activated the shutter. The camera made a loud noise, and his body jerked as if he'd been shocked. He staggered backward, but did not fall. The camera, still in his hand, now felt hot. He threw it to the sofa and moved away from it. Martin composed himself, took a breath, and tried to remember the steps. Pull the tab. That's right. Pull the tab. Wait a minute. Then remove the membrane from the print. He had watched Robert do it and remembered his father's amazement as he watched the image appear, dimly at first, then gradually sharper and brighter. Robert would say, "Come here, kids, look at this. Isn't this fantastic? Instant photographs." Tamara and Wilson would crowd around the camera while Martin and Sylvia stood back a bit. Martin's mother, since the Varenhorst incident, knew that there was something peculiar about photos and her son. She was always protective of her very peculiar child. Martin extracted the film as he remembered, then removed the membrane. It was hot to the touch. He set the photo on the coffee table and waited. Will it work? This film must be ancient. It did work. Gradually, the image appeared, showing the mantel clock at 10:10. The next step Martin faced with no small amount of trepidation. He would stand and hold the photo with his fingers on the image. It would be hot. He anticipated that he would feel and hear the buzzing or the vibrations as Thomas Gaylord had described. And then, well, he was not sure of what then might happen. Martin stood, gripping the photo by its edges, and moved to the spot where he had pushed the shutter. The sound began first, a buzzing. Then he felt a slight vibration on the soles of his shoes. He was about to place his fingers on the image when he heard the rumble of a truck coming down Elm Street. He turned just as it passed, and with the blinds wide open, he had a good view of the driver's door. On the door were painted the words, Hayes Construction. He turned back to the clock on the mantel, which now read 10:15. He looked at the photo, which he was still holding, but only by its edges. Apprehensive but determined, he drew a breath and placed the fingers of his right hand directly on the image. It was only warm at first, then hot, then very hot. He closed his eyes. It was painful. The buzzing grew louder, then the vibrations began, first at the soles of his feet, as if the floor itself were moving. The sound was something felt as much as heard, a low, buzzing, humming sort of sound, slowly rising in pitch. He remembered Thomas Gaylord's description. It's like being inside of an insect the size of a horse. He closed his eyes tighter as the feeling moved up his body, up through his legs, then through his torso, then to his shoulders, and finally to his head. It was paralyzing. The sound was deafening. It hurt. His shoulders lifted up, and the muscles of his neck tightened and went into spasm. Then, all at once, everything seemed to exit his body out of the top of his head. And suddenly, complete silence. Total, utter silence, just as Thomas Gaylord had described. He opened his eyes and tried to focus. It was hard. When he could see clearly, he looked around the room and realized that he had fallen back on the sofa. He looked at the clock on the mantel, which now read 10:10. Son of a... Martin said quietly, I think it worked. Or did it? Did it really work? There was no one to answer his question, but there needn't have been. Martin knew what had happened. He had looped back, just as Thomas Gaylord had described. He sat staring at the clock, thinking and waiting. When the clock read 10:14, he turned toward the front of the house. He heard the rumble of the truck, and within seconds it passed. Painted on the driver's door were the words, Hayes Construction. He looked back at the clock. It read 10:15. Where's the first truck? He thought. Or maybe, when is the first truck? He remembered Thomas Gaylord's words. Time is a confusing thing, Doctor. Martin repeated the experiment using the photo taken at 10:10. The second time, everything was a little less traumatic. He knew what to expect, how it would feel, and how long it would last. As the buzzing and vibrations traveled up his body, he spoke to them in his mind, coaxing them along. Come on, guys. Come on. Let's get it done. When the silence came, it was as before, deafening in its own way, and as before, he found himself slumped on the sofa. Once again, the clock read 10:10. At 10:14, he heard the approaching truck. He walked to the front windows and watched as it rattled its way down the hill toward Main Street. Good luck, Mr. Hayes. He chuckled softly, then winced in pain. Returning to the sofa, he sat down, closed his eyes, and massaged his neck. His muscles were tense and sore. He took a breath, tried to relax, and began to speak. Okay. So it does work, it does. How? Why? Martin grew agitated, and his words tumbled out in a stream of hesitation. What? What's happening? What is happening to me? Am I getting younger? When he had calmed himself, he went to the kitchen, found a marker, and drew a line on his left forearm. Returning to the sofa, he repeated the procedure with the photo of the clock at 10:10. The photo was still hot. The buzzing was still loud. The vibrations shook his whole body, and he talked to them again. "Come on, guys. Let's do this. Let's get it going." The silence came, and once more he found himself on the sofa trying to focus. The clock read 10:10. Slowly he turned the eyes from the mantle to his forearm. The mark was there. Everything had looped back to exactly as it had been at 10:10, except his own body and the ink he had put on it. So that's how it works, he said softly. I am not getting younger. Martin had one more experiment to do. He went to the kitchen and found the same marker. From Sylvia's notepad on the counter, he tore off a page and wrote 10:20, the time on the mantel clock. He walked back to the sofa, picked up the camera, aimed it at the clock with the note and pen beside it, and pressed the button. As before, it sent a shock through his body. He extracted the print and the membrane and waited. By 10:25, the image was clear. He picked up the note, folded it in half, and slipped it, along with the pen, into his pocket. He was excited and slightly out of breath. Everything happened as before, and when he had recovered and could focus, he saw the paper and the pen still resting beside the clock, which read 10:20. Reaching into his pocket, he felt the pen. "Oh, okay," he said softly. He stood, removed both the pen and the folded paper, and stared at them. His head went up and down as he looked at the pen and the paper in his hand, the pen and the paper that he had put in his pocket before the loop. Then looked at the pen and the paper next to the clock on the mantel. So is that how? Is that how it works? Things on my person? Things that I'm touching? Like this pen and the paper? They loop with me? I guess that's how it works. Martin gathered the photos and put them in the brown box with the checkered top. The phone in the kitchen rang, and it startled him. It was his mother, finished with her business at the bank. As he drove downtown, one question kept repeating. How far? How far back? How far back can I go?
It's all about photons, light, electromagnetic radiation of time. The camera can take all that light from a room or a landscape, or the sky. Photographs capture time. Time isn't meant to be captured. It must move forward. It must move forward. It must move forward. The camera takes all that energy, all that light, shrinks it down to the size of a pin. All those photons and subatomic stuff, like quarks. Do you know about quarks? Quarks are smaller than 43 billion billionths of a centimeter. Just think about that. Last time. Last time. Last time. Last time. Last time. 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 You've been listening to Murder at Birdland, an audio novel. To learn more about the author and the story behind the music, visit murderatbirdland.com or mikesteinell.com.